Check out this t-shirt. It has a rabbit on it. This is another Berlinsides t-shirt in March 2013. It also has something on the back, so let's look at it more closely. As you can see, this is a rabbit, and if you look very closely, you can just about make out some characters. So this is like an ASCII art rabbit. And you can probably guess that I really like this design because my old LiveOverflow intro also featured an ASCII running rabbit. I'm a huge fan of The Matrix, and obviously Alice in Wonderland is also amazing. So I've always been a fan of this trope, follow the white rabbit. So let's look at it on the back. On here it also says follow the white rabbit, Berlinsides 2013. And this ASCII art here is a house. You can see here a big window and then a big entrance door. And above the entrance door it says Universal Hall. This is actually the event location. Here, this thing you can just barely make out. I believe that's like an old pipe that is like coming out of the ground. Also in here you can make out some German text. It says, "Welcome in the Universal Hall." This was some kind of old factory building. I did look it up once, what was in there before, but I forgot. And this was the main entrance. So when you arrive, you would like go here, and right inside of this entrance here, they would have the table where you would have to show your token, and then they allow you to go inside. Actually, I think I might have something else to show from this Berlinsides. Give me 1 second. Oh yeah, remember my notebook that I showed you in the Shackspace episode? It has a sticker from this Berlinsides on here. Ah, and this here. This was basically what you got when you went to the entrance and showed your token, and with this you would be let in all the time. And on the back you can see some of the sponsors. This conference was also for free thanks to these companies. Anyway, so what's up with this Berlinsides? Well, there's not too much I can tell actually. Last month I made a video about file formats, and I did mention, for example, that I saw a talk about zip file format tricks. This was at this Berlinsides. So I hope this gives you a little bit more context from where I learned stuff. Thanks to events like this, I was introduced to the basics of file format tricks. This Berlinsides again was visited by Travis Goodspeed, Sergey Bratos, and his PhD students. In this time there was a new PhD student there, and they presented research on ELF eccentricities. It was like more ELF file format tricks and problems. The basic research was that there are multiple parsers for ELF file formats, and the ELF file format is extremely awful. So you have like parser differentials between different components that read in ELF files. Stack Smashing also recently made a video about the ELF file format, which I will also link below, so check that out. Now, 2013 is actually my last year of university, and I should mention probably two things. First of all, I made my OSCP. So as you know, I was dual studying at IBM and the university, and IBM was paying for one certificate for each student. A lot of my friends did, for example, a Linux certification, others did like a Java certification, and I stumbled over the OSCP, the Offensive Security Certified Professional certification. As you know, it costs quite a bit of money, and IBM only covered like 30 days of lab time. But no problem for me. During the time I did OSCP, I was in university, so during class I could just like hack on boxes. I also remember that I by far not got like all the machines and all the networks in that lab. But all in all, I felt like OSCP was pretty easy and straightforward. I really didn't have a lot of struggle. I had some Linux experience before. I generally had already a basic like security understanding, but OSCP really introduced me to like all these tools like Metasploit and using Nmap, or like copying some exploit from a random website and getting it to run, things like this. Like that was so simple. The hardest, like the buffer overflow, I already had experience through CTFs, so the buffer overflow parts were like no issue for me. The only challenge was basically transferring my knowledge from Linux to like Windows, because you had to exploit a Windows binary there. I get a lot of questions if OSCP is worth it, even if it's worth it nowadays. Now, I'm generally a bit pessimistic about it and generally do not recommend it, mostly because everybody else is recommending it. And like, I don't want to make it sound like it's this amazing, incredible thing. I think it's okay. And for me in that moment, it was like a really cool thing. I learned a lot of tools and stuff like this. And it was really fun because it was kind of like CTF. But I probably would not have paid like that money if I had to pay it for myself. I think it was a great value for me getting it for free from my university, but yeah. Now I have obviously like a lot more experience. I can also look back and say, well, this stuff was never really applicable to me in my work, what I'm doing now. So like, it wasn't like really that helpful, but it was still kind of fun. Anyway, I just wanted to mention it because I think it's like interesting to hear like the context and the timeline of everything. And so this t-shirt is now in March of 2013 and university will end in like October, November 2013. Then my bachelor's is done. So now I have to start thinking about what I do after university. And obviously one option I had and what I thought about was doing penetration testing, doing some kind of security job. And remember the sponsors on the back here? And basically what I did, I contacted them. I do remember contacting two of them, CureSec and Schulke.net, and like asking like for a meeting that I'm like looking for a job after university. There's not much I remember about these conversations except that I started to connect with them, and you know, in the following years they still knew me and we would say hello and quickly catch up and see where we stand in life. So I guess I was networking again. I also remember that we talked about like salary, and I said like my salary expectations, which I think was a little bit too high for them, which I understand because I was just like a junior. I was like just starting out. I did have like my OSCP, or I was just about to get my OSCP at the time. But you know, like I wasn't like super experienced or anything like that. But I roughly knew like what I could earn if I do like web development or if I do consulting at IBM. And I was just like asking for a little bit more than that, I think. So I also remember having like a telephone interview, I think, with one of the companies. And they asked me about some technical stuff. I think I remember them asking what are the parameters for Netstat to list all the listening programs or something like this. And I think my answer was, well, I have to Google. Obviously, I didn't go for any of these jobs here. If you have been following me for a bit, you probably know that I've done my master's degree after my bachelor's. So at this time, I was still like unsure what to do. Maybe I start working or maybe I go to university for a master's. I was not sure yet. I also wanted to check out like my opportunities. You know, maybe there is some kind of job opening for me, and you know, me getting into IT security, maybe that would be the perfect thing to get, you know. But yeah, it's crazy to think that I've almost finished like 3 years of university at this point. You know, with all the CTFs and war games I've played during that time and all the experience I got from IBM from all my practical internships. I learned so much in these past years. I think at this point I really started to feel comfortable with like IT security. Like the shitty game hack stuff that I mentioned in the previous episode about PXE. This was one of these times where I did like my own personal research and figured out tools and learned new stuff, and then was actually able to like implement a hack or something like this. Like I started to feel more comfortable and more confident in my abilities, that I might not know it yet, but that I'm able to pull it off if I put the time into something. So yeah, this was basically berlinsides 2013. Could my life get any better? That's probably what you ask yourself. Well, I will tell you with the next t-shirt.